My brother stalked and attacked my girlfriend at a wedding. I defended her, and now my family is calling me a monster because he's facing real consequences. I'm 30M, and my girlfriend is 28F. I'll call her Tessa. My brother is 33M. I'll call him Nolan. We're in Oregon. The wedding was in a smaller town about an hour away. Nolan has always been the golden child in our family. He's older, he's loud, he's the one who tells it like it is, and my parents treat every consequence like a tragedy that happened to him instead of something he caused. He's been fired more times than I can count. He's gotten into fights at bars. He's wrecked 2 cars. Every time, my mom says he just needs support, not criticism. I don't live near my parents anymore because I got tired of being expected to clean up Nolan's messes. I'm a younger one, so the job always landed on me. Rides home, covering his rent just for a month, smoothing things over with relatives after he mouthed off, apologizing for him when he embarrassed people. I stopped doing that a few years ago, and it's been a constant argument ever since. Tessa and I have been together a little over 2 years. She's quiet in groups at first, then funny once she's comfortable. She works in marketing for a small outdoor brand. She doesn't drink much. She's the kind of person who remembers names and asks follow-up questions and actually listens to the answers. My family liked her at first, or at least they acted like it. Nolan was different from the start. The first time he met her, he did that thing where he stands too close and tries to dominate the space. He made a big show of hugging her, holding on too long, and telling her she was exactly my type, which already fell off because she's my girlfriend and he knows that. I stepped between them and joked it away because it was the first meeting and I didn't want to create a scene. After that, the pattern started. Nolan would find excuses to text me, but the messages were really about her, asking if she was coming to things, what she wore, if she was still mad at him after he made some stupid comment. Then he somehow got her number from my mom. My mom tried to claim it was an accident, like she just thought it would be helpful for family group texts. But the first message Nolan sent her wasn't about logistics. It was him asking if she wanted to grab a drink sometime without my little brother hovering. Tessa showed me right away. She didn't respond. She blocked him. I called my mom and told her she had to stop sharing Tessa's info with Nolan. My mom acted offended and said I was accusing her of something. Then she said Nolan was just being friendly and I was being sensitive. That was the first time I told my mom directly that Nolan's behavior toward my girlfriend was not friendly and it needed to stop. It didn't stop. It just got sneakier. At my dad's birthday dinner last spring, Nolan kept trying to get Tessa alone, offering to show her something in the garage, offering to walk her to her car even though she wasn't leaving, asking if she wanted to see the good pictures from the last family trip because my mom only posted the bad ones. Tessa stayed near me and my aunt the whole time. When we left, she told me she didn't want to be around him again. I told my parents that. I said we wouldn't be going to events if Nolan was there. My dad went quiet like he does when he doesn't want to deal with conflict. My mom got angry and said I was threatening the family. Nolan did his usual thing where he laughs and says I'm being dramatic and jealous. Then there was the gas station thing, which was the point where I stopped pretending it was just awkward flirting. Tessa was driving home from work. She stopped at a gas station she always uses, and Nolan was there, leaning against his truck like he'd been waiting. He told her he recognized her car and figured it was fate. She got back in her car and locked the doors. He knocked on the window and smiled like it was a joke. She drove off. When she got home, she was shaking. She said she didn't know if he actually tracked her or if it was random, but she didn't want to find out which one it was by waiting for the next time. I confronted Nolan on the phone and asked him what he was doing at that gas station. He said he'd been in the area. I asked why he was approaching my girlfriend when she blocked him. He said she blocked him because I poisoned her. Then he said something that still makes my stomach turn because it was so casual. He said, she's not married to you. You don't own her. If she wants a better option, she can choose it. I told him if he went near her again, I'd file a police report. He laughed and told me to stop pretending I was tough. Then he said he'd see us at the wedding anyway. That wedding was my cousin Maris. She's my mom's niece, and my mom was involved in everything. So skipping wasn't an option without setting off a bigger fight. Maris and I grew up close, and I didn't want to miss it because of Nolan. So Tessa and I decided we'd go, stay near other people, leave early if we had to, and not drink so we could drive out anytime. The ceremony was outside. It went fine. Nolan was already drinking before the reception even started. I could tell because his eyes had that glassy look and his jokes were getting louder. He kept trying to catch Tessa's attention across tables, raising his glass at her, winking, making faces. She ignored him and stayed in conversation with my cousin's friends. The reception space was crowded. The music was loud. For a while, I thought we were going to make it through without anything happening. Then Tessa leaned in and told me she needed the restroom. She said she was going to go with Maris's friend. I watched them head toward the building. Then Maris's friend got pulled into a conversation near the doorway, and Tessa kept walking. I should have followed, and I didn't because I didn't want to be the boyfriend who has to escort his girlfriend to a bathroom at a family wedding. I didn't want to feel like Nolan had that much control over my choices. 5 minutes later, I saw Nolan moving fast through the crowd. Not stumbling, not drifting, moving with purpose. My body went cold because I knew where he was going. I went after him, and when I got to the hallway by the restrooms, I heard Tessa say, "Nolan, stop." It wasn't loud. It was that controlled voice people use when they don't want to make a scene, but they're scared. When I turned the corner, Nolan had her pinned against the wall near the restroom door. One hand was on the wall above her, like he was blocking her. The other hand was on her wrist. He was leaning close like he was whispering something. She was turned sideways, trying to pull away. Her eyes were wide, and she looked at me like she was trying to decide whether yelling would make it worse. I didn't do a dramatic shout. I didn't give a speech. I moved in and grabbed Nolan's forearm and shoved it off her wrist hard. He spun toward me, and his face changed. It wasn't surprise. It was anger, like I interrupted something he believed he was entitled to. He said, "Get out of this," and he stepped toward me. Then he reached around me, toward Tessa, like he was going to grab her again, and that's when I shoved him back into the wall. The hallway was narrow. He hit the wall, then he came forward swinging. It wasn't a clean punch, more like wild flailing, but he caught my shoulder, and then he grabbed for my shirt. I didn't want to stand there trading hits at a wedding, so I did the simplest thing I could think of. I wrapped him up, pushed him down the hall away from her, and got him on the ground. He kept trying to twist out, yelling that I was attacking him, yelling for help like he was the victim. I could hear doors opening. I could hear people saying, "What's going on?" I told Tessa to go back into the reception and get Maris or one of the venue staff, and she ran. Nolan was still trying to get up. I kept him down with my weight and my arms. Not choking him, not punching him, just keeping him from getting loose. He tried to bite my hand at one point, and I pulled back before he could. Then he spit and started yelling that Tessa was a liar and that she wanted him, but I was controlling her. A venue staff guy showed up, then another, then my uncle, then my mom. The second my mom saw Nolan on the ground, she started screaming my name like I was strangling him. I said, "Call the police." He attacked her, and my mom screamed back, "You're ruining this wedding. Get off your brother." My uncle pulled Nolan away from me. Nolan jumped up and tried to rush past him like he was going toward Tessa, and that's when the venue staff stepped in and physically blocked the hallway. Tessa was standing at the edge of the reception room with Maris and two bridesmaids, holding her wrist and crying quietly. Maris looked like she was about to throw up. The police came fast because it's a small town and the venue already had security issues earlier in the night with someone else getting too drunk. They separated everyone. They pulled Tessa aside, then they pulled me aside, then they talked to Nolan. Nolan did the thing where he tries to charm authority. He laughed. He said it was a misunderstanding. He said I'm unstable. He said Tessa flirted with him, and I got jealous. Then one of the officers asked Tessa to show them her neck. She did. There were clear marks. Not deep, but visible. The officer's tone changed immediately. They took Nolan outside, and he started yelling. My mom followed them, crying, telling them Nolan is a good man and that I have anger issues. Then Nolan tried to pull away from the officer, and that was it. They cuffed him. The reception basically stopped after that. People pretended it didn't, but it did. You could feel it. Maris still got her cake cutting, still did the first dance. Everyone kept looking at the doors. My mom vanished for long stretches because she was outside with Nolan. My dad was sitting at a table, staring into his drink like his brain shut down. Tessa wanted to leave immediately, so we did. On the way home, she finally told me what Nolan whispered to her in the hallway. He told her he'd been watching her for months. He said he knew the gym she goes to. He said he could tell when she's alone because I'm not in her pictures. He said he was tired of waiting for her to pick the right brother. When she tried to push past him, he grabbed her wrist. When she told him to let go, he told her she was going to make this harder than it needed to be. We got home at almost midnight, and my phone started blowing up before I even took my shoes off. My mom, my dad, my aunt, Nolan's friend, someone from my mom's church that I barely know. Message after message saying Nolan was arrested because I attacked him, saying the police didn't understand, saying I needed to fix it before Nolan loses his job. My mom left a voicemail crying and saying I'm a monster, that I humiliated the family, and that if Nolan does something to himself, it'll be my fault. I didn't answer anyone. I sat with Tessa on the couch while she tried to calm down. I told her we were going to do whatever she wanted. Report, restraining order, all of it. This wasn't about family peace anymore. It was about her safety. The next morning, she went to urgent care to document the bruising. She didn't want it first because she said it felt dramatic, but the nurse took one look and told her she did the right thing coming in. The police called us that afternoon to get a full statement. They said Nolan was being held until arraignment because he was already on probation for a separate incident, which I didn't even know about because my parents keep things like that quiet. That's when my dad finally called, and I answered because it was my dad. He didn't ask if Tessa was okay. He didn't ask what happened. He said, "Your mother's falling apart. You need to tell them you overreacted. Nolan made a mistake. He was drunk. We can handle this as a family." I told him I watched Nolan pin my girlfriend against a wall and grab her. I told him I had to physically stop him. My dad said, "We didn't have to put him on the ground like that." That was the moment I realized I wasn't going to get anything from them except pressure. So I told my dad I was done talking unless it was about Nolan staying away from Tessa, and I hung up. 2 days later, Maris called, and she sounded exhausted. She said the venue gave her security footage from the hallway because there are cameras by the restrooms. She said she watched it and felt sick. She said she's sorry she didn't take Nolan seriously before. She said my mom has been calling her nonstop, trying to get her to say the footage is out of context. Maris said she was going to give the footage to the prosecutor if they asked for it. She said she'd write a statement for Tessa if it helped. That call mattered more than anything else that week because it was the first family member who spoke like they lived in reality. But my mom escalated. She started showing up at our apartment, not coming inside because the building is locked, but waiting outside, leaving notes on my windshield. The notes were all over the place. One said, "Please come talk to us." Another said, "How could you do this to your own brother?" Another said, "Tessa is turning you against your family." Then Nolan started calling from a number I didn't recognize. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail that was mostly breathing and then him saying, "She's going to regret this." And then he laughed. That voicemail went straight to the detective, and that's when we filed for a restraining order. I thought the restraining order would make my parents back off, like it would force them to accept the seriousness of what happened. Instead, it made them act like we were declaring war. My mom told people at our extended family holiday dinner that Tessa framed Nolan. She told my grandma that I'm being manipulated. She told Maris that she's disloyal for offering the security footage. She even tried to convince my boss to talk sense into me, which my boss didn't do, but it still happened, which is a level of humiliation I didn't think my mom was capable of. Tessa got a message from an account with no profile picture saying, "If you drop this and apologize, Nolan will forgive you." When she blocked it, the account made another and sent, "You're going to get what you deserve." We showed that to the police too. I want to be clear about something. I didn't want to be the guy whose family ends up in court. I didn't want to spend nights saving screenshots and checking locks twice. I didn't want my girlfriend to feel unsafe because of my brother. But the choice wasn't between keeping the peace and causing drama. It was between acting and waiting for Nolan to do worse. The arraignment happened the next week. Nolan's charges included assault and harassment. There was a no-contact order issued, meaning he couldn't contact Tessa directly or through anyone else. My mom called me after that and told me I was killing my brother. I said, "No, I stopped him," and I hung up again. Update, 9 days later. The restraining order hearing was set fast because the judge saw the medical documentation and the voicemail and the venue incident report. Tessa was terrified about going, not because she doubted what happened, but because she didn't want to be in the same room as Nolan. She also didn't want to be in the same room as my mom, which honestly made sense because my mom has a way of turning any space into something hostile. We got a temporary order first, which meant Nolan couldn't come near our apartment or her work while we waited for the full hearing. The first thing my mom did when she found out was call Tessa's work, not to threaten them, but to do the softer version of damage. She called and said she was worried about Tessa's mental state and that Tessa was making false claims against a family member. Then she hinted that Tessa might be unstable and that they should be careful. She didn't say it outright. She just planted it and let it sit. Tessa's manager pulled her into a room and asked if everything was okay. Tessa had to explain to her workplace that my brother assaulted her at a wedding and my mom is trying to intimidate her. Her manager was supportive. They told her to forward any messages and they'd block numbers. But the fact that my mom thought that was okay made me see her differently, like she wasn't just enabling Nolan, she was actively trying to punish the person he hurt. 2 nights later, we got a knock at our door around 10:30. Not pounding, but firm. I looked through the peephole, and it was my dad. I didn't open it. I talked through the door. I asked what he wanted. He said he needed to talk. I asked if Nolan was with him. He said no. I asked if my mom was with him. He hesitated, then said she was in the car because she didn't want to upset Tessa. I told him to leave. My dad said, "Please, just listen. Nolan's public defender says if you and Tessa don't show up, the case will be weaker." That was the first time I understood what they were really doing. It wasn't about apologizing. It wasn't about family. It was about getting us to back out so Nolan could get less time. I told my dad the no contact order means Nolan doesn't get to negotiate through family members. My dad said, "Nolan is your brother. You have to help him." I said, "He hurt her." My dad said, "You didn't mean it. He's stressed. He's had a hard year." Tessa was standing behind me in the hallway, silent, and I could feel her trying to decide whether to speak. So I said it for both of us. I said, "Leave or we're calling the police." My dad didn't argue after that. He just stood there for a second, then walked away. When he got to the stairwell, he said, "I don't recognize you anymore. Like I was the one who changed, like Nolan pinning my girlfriend to a wall was normal, and my refusal to cover it up was the betrayal." The next day, my mom posted on Facebook, vague but obvious, saying she was praying for families torn apart by lies and jealousy. Relatives started texting me Bible verses. One aunt said I was making a mistake that I'd regret. I blocked her. Then Nolan violated the no-contact order, not by calling Tessa, but by sending a message through her cousin's husband, who barely knows Nolan and clearly didn't want to be involved. The message was, "Tell her to fix this before I fix it." We reported it. The detective sounded tired when he called back, like none of this surprised him. He said they'd add the violation to the file and that we should keep documenting. He said Nolan was making his situation worse every time he tried to intimidate anyone. The hearing came. Tessa testified. I testified. Maris provided the hallway footage. Nolan's attorney tried to argue it was mutual conflict. The judge watched the footage and didn't look impressed. My mom was in the back row, shaking her head dramatically every time Tessa spoke. Nolan stared at Tessa like she was an object he lost and wanted back. The judge granted the restraining order for 1 year. No contact. Stay away from her work, our home, and any place she's known to frequent. The judge also warned Nolan that any violation would be treated seriously because of the existing criminal case. Outside the courthouse, my mom walked right up to me like there weren't deputies standing around, and she said, "You did this. You broke this family." I said, "No, Nolan did." My mom turned to Tessa and said, "You've got what you wanted." I stepped in front of Tessa and told my mom she needed to leave before she got herself arrested too. My dad pulled my mom away, and my mom yelled over her shoulder that I'm dead to her. That night, Nolan got transferred to a different unit at the jail because he got into a fight with someone. My mom called me crying, saying he was hurt, saying he needed money for commissary. I didn't answer. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel like I won. I just felt done. Tessa and I started making changes. She switched gyms. Her work adjusted her schedule, so she wasn't walking to her car alone at night. We got a camera for our door. We stopped going to certain restaurants we knew Nolan liked. We made it clear to mutual friends that if they shared our location with Nolan or my mom, they were out of our lives. A few friends understood immediately. A few tried to do the middle ground thing, saying Nolan's messed up, but he's still family. Those people faded away once they realized we weren't going to compromise. Update. 7 weeks later. The criminal case moved slower than I expected. There were continuances. There were motions. There were days where we heard nothing. Then out of nowhere, Tessa got served with a subpoena for additional testimony because Nolan decided he wanted to fight the charges instead of taking the plea deal. My mom acted like that was proof Nolan was innocent. She left me a voicemail saying, "He's finally standing up for himself against your lies." Like the hallway footage didn't exist, like the medical photos didn't exist, like Nolan's own voicemail didn't exist. We met with the prosecutor. She walked us through what the trial could look like. She also told us the state was considering adding charges because of the no-contact violation and because Nolan's behavior in custody showed a pattern. She didn't promise anything, but she said Nolan was making choices that the court would notice. The week before trial, Nolan's attorney reached out to propose a plea deal. Nolan would plead guilty to a reduced assault charge. He'd plead guilty to harassment. He'd accept a longer restraining order as part of sentencing. The deal also included mandatory evaluation and classes. It included jail time with credit for time served. Tessa didn't want to be the person who decides how long someone sits in jail. She kept saying that. I kept telling her she wasn't deciding anything. Nolan did. The only decision we had was whether we were willing to testify if it went to trial. She said yes, quietly, and I watched her shoulders tense up like she was bracing for impact. The day the plea got entered, my parents showed up in court. My mom sat behind Nolan and stared at Tessa the entire time. My dad looked smaller than I remembered, like all the energy went into keeping my mom from exploding. Nolan stood, entered the plea, and the judge asked him if he understood the conditions and the consequences of violating them. Nolan said yes, and his tone sounded bored, like he was agreeing to a parking ticket. The judge read out a summary of the case facts, including the venue hallway footage. When the judge mentioned the no-contact violation, Nolan's face changed. He glanced back at my mom. My mom looked away like she'd never heard of it. The judge set sentencing for later that afternoon. We sat in the hallway, and my mom approached me again. This time she was quieter, like she was trying a different tactic. She said, "If you tell him it wasn't that bad, he can come home. He can work. He can get better. You're pushing him toward the edge." I told her Nolan had months to stop, and he didn't. I told her she helped him by giving him access to Tessa and by defending him every time he crossed a line. My mom's face tightened, and she said, "You're choosing her over blood." I said, "I'm choosing basic safety," and then I walked away because there was nothing left to say that would land. At sentencing, Nolan got 6 months in county jail with credit for time served, then 2 years of probation. The judge ordered a 2-year restraining order. The judge warned Nolan that any contact with Tessa, direct or indirect, would likely land him back in custody. The judge also said Nolan was barred from possessing weapons during probation and had to complete evaluation and classes before probation could close. My mom cried loudly in the courtroom. Nolan stared straight ahead. My dad didn't move at all. After, my dad caught me in the hallway and asked if we could talk without my mom, so we went outside. He asked me if this was really what I wanted. I said I wanted Nolan to leave Tessa alone. I said I wanted my family to acknowledge what happened. I said I wanted to stop being told I'm responsible for Nolan's choices. My dad nodded once and said he couldn't promise my mom would ever accept it. Then he said, "I'm sorry I didn't protect you from him growing up," and it was the first sentence I'd ever heard from my dad that wasn't about avoiding conflict. I didn't tell him everything. I didn't turn it into a long conversation. I just said, "Thanks for saying that." And then I told him he can contact me, but if he tries to pass messages for my mom or Nolan, I'm done. He said he understood. That was the closest thing to resolution I think we're going to get with my parents. Tessa and I renewed our lease, but moved units within the same building. Only a few people have the new unit number. We changed her phone number. We gave the restraining order paperwork to her work security and our building manager. We told Maris that we love her, but we're skipping family events for a while, even if Nolan is in jail, because my mom can't act normal and we're not volunteering for another round. My mom still tells people I attacked Nolan at the wedding. She still tells relatives that Tessa set him up. Now, when someone repeats it to me, I say there's video and court records and a plea, and if they keep pushing, they get blocked. My family can call me a monster as much as they want. Nolan is the one who stalked my girlfriend. Nolan is the one who put his hands on her. Nolan is the one who decided intimidation was a good idea even after getting arrested. The court finally treated it like what it was, and that part is done.